listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, people who play it. Today is March 9th, 2023, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I am joined, as always, by my co-host Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing this fine Thursday?
I think we have completed the set at this point. I'm not sure if this is the first time we've ever recorded on a Thursday, but we haven't done it a lot. Tuesdays we've done a lot, Fridays. Sometimes Saturdays or Sundays if something really special is going on. Mondays and Wednesdays, but Thursday's a different feel, I just regret that we don't have anything exciting to talk about this week.
I know,
too
right?
Bad, but the show must go on.
We even delayed the show by 2 days just to, try and see if we could squeeze something out.
Wring some life out of the news cycle, but, here we are.
Of course, we're kidding. We had work commitments earlier in the week, and for once it actually paid off. There happened to be some large announcements yesterday, so they got lots to talk about. But before we dive into World of Warcraft stuff, Jason, we got some ABK news that we want to cover here.
Yeah, kind of an interesting development. Last week, I believe it was, Communication Workers of America have filed charges against Activision and specifically against Bobby Kotick, claiming that the publisher violated several workplace laws in relation to the firing of 2 QA testers. This was in the wake of the return to office announcement, right? And the fact that there was going to be mandatory RTO, and that there were numerous protests about the plan, and in particular, there were 2 employees who were essentially terminated for using crude and abusive language in their protest. Which is that was the company's complaint. CWA said that Activision improperly denied a request to have a coworker witness a disciplinary meeting, which preceded the termination. And they're claiming that the firings were done in response to the employees' engagement in protected, concerted, and union activity. I'll keep as a reminder. In the U.S., employees do have the legal right to seek a union representation, even if Activision Blizzard doesn't like that. But that is how it works. And CWA had a statement that said, for far too long, Activision has gotten away with treating its employees, especially QA testers, like disposable workhorses. Firing 2 employees for joining with their coworkers to express concern around hasty return to office policies is retaliation, point blank. This is from CWA Secretary Treasurer Sarah Steffens. She said, when faced with unfair treatment by unscrupulous employers like Activision, workers should have the right to express themselves. So I don't expect anything like earth-shattering to come from this, but of course, we talked about the call that Mike Ybarra hosted a couple weeks ago, and the giant PR black eye that turned into, and we've been talking for almost 2 years now about the way this company treats many of its employees. And, of course they used, some blue language as an excuse to fire a couple QA testers who were agitating for unionizing. It's gross. It's typical. I doubt anything earth shattering is going to happen as a result of this, but I thought it was worth noting anyway. It just sucks that it has to be this way. I wish that the people who make the games we like could work in a cool place, and it's a shame that it just keeps moving in this direction all the time. And we're coming up on the projected sort of time frame for the Microsoft acquisition, and I mean, who knows where that's going to go at this point. It seems like there's some ridiculous breaking story about that every other week at this point. We don't get into it too much here because it really doesn't directly impact the employees who make the games that we play. But I think that overall that acquisition is like bad for the industry and bad for the consumer, but it could be good for Blizzard Studios to get out from underneath the Activision Blizzard behemoth. And I believe if you look at the information that we have, that and what we've seen in the past, that Microsoft is likely to be a better corporate steward for these studios than what they've had lately. But I don't know, man. It's hard to feel good about any of this, but it's kind of funny to see these employees and CWA kind of put the screws to Bobby and management a little bit.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how this all pans out, but in the end, at least they're pushing back to a certain degree. We'll see what happens. Gets in the headlines. All right, let's hop into what you did last week in World of Warcraft, so we can talk about what's happening in 2 weeks in World of Warcraft. So what did you get up to this past week, Jason?
Well, it's actually been like 2 weeks now, because I had sort of most of a week of WoW in between the last time I had last week and this week mostly already. I will say this. We've been doing Heroic Vault, but sort of prioritizing the unlock, right? So we do boss 1, 7, and 8, and then we do Mythic. And then, that's where we sort of have to have logistical solutions to problems. But I will say that Heroic Vault feels great. I think this is the most fun and accessible heroic dungeon they've done in at least 3 expansions. We have like 4 heroic Raz kills now. It was a one-shot this week with like minimal prep. It's not like a headache for me to set the group up. We were even like overhealing it kind of a bit, kind of at the point where I was like, is this too ridiculous? Is this not going to die fast enough? But it was fine. That's a great sign. That's what I want for a boss that we have experience on. And, as this tier ages out, I want to just kill it and have fun with the game. And this is not Denathrius. It's not Sylvanas. It's not even like Jaina or Ashara or something. So it's nice to just go in there and know, like, all right, in about an hour, we can knock out like the heroic unlock and reset and do Mythic or whatever. So really fun. I'm very happy with the way that has turned out. I would expect there will probably be another round of tuning even. I think they're probably going to end up tuning some stuff down at least like one more time on the way out, just to give people that final nudge, or to just, streamline it that much more, which I look forward to. So you might think like, well, what are you doing with all this time you're saving with doing the unlock? And the idea is to do Mythic Taros Prague, which it's been going okay when we've been able to dedicate time to it, but that's sort of been the problem, I guess. Our best pull on it, we got it to about 30%, which sounds good. You think, oh, a fight like that, 30%, a kill is probably near, except on the pulls where we're getting that low, like we were in the last safe spot before Area Denial closes off the entire room. And 30% is way too high to be able to kill it from there with that little time remaining. So, but we're overhealing and just trying to experiment with stuff. I believe it's a doable fight for our team, but the problem is I'm seeing just brain drain. People are just not logging in. People are prioritizing other things over showing up to raid, which is fine. I mean, real life happens, right? Like real life obviously takes priority over that stuff. Some people just need a break. Some people have other stuff going on. Some people have external factors that they can't kind of button up before raid time or during raid time and then get back to. So I get that, but it always does seem to happen that priorities shift once we get, deep in the pocket of like heroic clears are done and whatever, we just farm out the last boss. And it's frustrating. I have some newer people on the team who they're decent players, and this is like the first time they're experiencing this with our team, and they're very confused, right? Because Taros is a killable boss. We only have 29 pulls on it. Like if we get pulls, we'll kill the boss, and then we can move on. I think there's a realistic shot if attendance holds out that we could get like 5 of 8 this tier if we just put pulls in, but don't have the appetite for it as a group. And so, from my perspective, leading the group and being part of leadership and having conversations with the officers and stuff, I think what we're going to do is just move to sort of this model where Tuesdays we prioritize Razageth and then do Mythic Reclears. Wednesdays are designated for Mythic Prague, and if we don't have a team for Mythic Prague, then we don't raid. And Sundays are for sign up only for heroic reclear bosses 2 through 6. And if we don't have signups, we don't raid. I don't want to burn people out. I want people to have fun. I want people to show up and be motivated to show up to have fun. And at this point in time, I don't see a huge benefit in us making everybody assemble to kill heroic bosses 2 through 6 on a weekly basis just because. Even though it's a quick and smooth reclear, they're pretty easy and fun bosses overall once you know them and once you're geared up. It just doesn't seem like the correct use of people's time. So this is one of those situations where I have to take what I kind of want out of the game, or what I feel like should be, on our team's agenda, and put it aside because I'm not getting the buy-in from everybody that I need in order to do that. And, there have been times where that's been frustrating to me, and I'm feeling that frustration now, even though I'm cognizant of it, right? I'm trying to not like give into that frustration, just say it is the way it is. People, as a group, we're going to do what the group wants to do. But, in the moment, it's not always easy. But the good thing is, raid itself tends to be laid back. Like the stuff that people definitely want to do and show up for is easy and smooth and fun. So that's really good.
Yeah. It can be a struggle when you can't get the people together, though, to push farther into your mythic prog that you're looking to do, right? That can be the
I mean, it's a bummer because I know we could get this boss if we could get a couple solid nights of pulls on it, even on like our short schedule in general. I know we can do it, but we just don't have the people are not in the headspace. It's not the priority for enough of the people in the group. So
yeah, which
it may or may not happen.
Yeah, which is going to happen when we get into this later part of a season, when we come to, like, fact of the matter is we got, and this is one of the announcements from today, we got, sort of like a partial patch content patch dropping in a couple of weeks. So that's going to bring in a whole bunch of new content. It's going to bring people back to the game to a certain degree who've been sort of checking out more, give people more things to do. And we'll talk about that a bit later in the show. But when you start to that point in that lull, the 3 weeks leading up to some release like this, it tends to be something that you notice with a lot of teams.
Yeah, and like I sort of alluded to, like this is not the first time this has ever happened, right? Like I'm used to this boom bust cycle with my team, so it just is what it is, and I have to deal with it as an individual, but I have to put that aside for the team as well. So I'm okay putting less time in and just focusing on the stuff that is fun. I think the real bummer that I'm feeling right now with the current state of season 1 is the last thing on my plate that I really care about is getting all plus 20s in time for all the teleports. And I still need 4 of them. So I still need half the field. Last week was brutal. Tyrannical Bursting Grievous did not feel great, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. I only ended up doing 1 key, I think. I just did 1, and I was like, okay, I'm done. I'll see you next week. We did like Shadow Moon. So okay. But it was just not, it was not the week to mess around, and my main healer buddy was not really around either, and I was out one night, so it was like I'm not going to try to piece something together, pug something this week.
Yeah.
This week is a bit better, but my fortunes haven't really improved. It's still a decently hard week. Like it's not like brutally punishing like last week, but it's also not a cakewalk. Spent a lot of time so far this reset bricking Ruby Life Pools and Halls of Valor keys, just by like a boss, not like super far behind, but enough that you don't get what you want out of the process. So a little bit frustrating in that regard too. Other than that, like I'm really, I'm still not playing that much. I tried to kind of get back in a couple weeks ago and get the monk going a little bit, start grinding out some set pieces. And last week I didn't even do like aiding the accord on my warrior. I didn't, I'm just not doing stuff because the reward isn't there. But I think that's okay. I'm not feeling, frustrated about that. I spent a lot of time at release, like working through the grinds that they kind of put forth for you in 10.0. And I completed all the ones I cared about to the degree that I cared about completing them. So, those weren't really designed for most players to push through in like a month or whatever it took me, 2 months maybe. But, I got them done. So I'm okay with just, okay. Do friends want to do things inside WoW? Then let's do them. And I just have a different perspective on it than I did maybe 2 years ago when Shadowlands was new and we're feeling that pinch, like, man, the stuff that is here for me to do, I'll do it, but I don't really want to, but I wish there was something better to do. Like I I'm not in that headspace as to what kind of the conversations we would have on the show in like 9.0.
Yeah, it's funny because as you're sort of hitting this lull, and a lot of people are hitting this lull, I'm starting to get the itch again. That's what's starting to happen with me. So I poked my head into WoW, a few times this past week and did some events and knocked some stuff out in the outside world and started to like think about maybe I should like actually look at what healing Mythic Plus keys currently looks like for Resto Druid, because I haven't been looking at it too closely lately, and what people are doing meta-wise and how they're pushing to higher keys and what gear they're wearing and what talents they're using and all the different builds for the talents and what roles they're playing. And there's just so many things, right, that my brain goes to when I start thinking about that content, that the fact that that's starting to happen is like, oh, good. Like that itch is coming back. I'm getting ready. I've had a long enough break that my brain is starting to be like, yes, you are now interested in World of Warcraft again, like you knew you would be. It's just one of those things that like every now and then you need that month or two off to sort of get your head right and start focusing on content. So yeah, I'm getting back towards it. So maybe when 07 drops, that'll be like a nice return point in time. We will find out. We'll see what's happening with it.
That'll be good too for catching up on Renown and stuff with the envoys or whatever they're calling them in the new spot. And there'll be some, with the new I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but the replacement for the punch card type thing, like that'll, that's a nice step up into some stuff, get some power from that. So I mean, with games like WoW that have this cycle where they kind of build up over the course of an entire year and then level off, it's like it is kind of, it's always kind of smart to wait longer and then get in later, because then, your ramp up is so much smoother.
Well, it depends on what your goals are content-wise, right? So if you're trying to actually get, mythic progression or whatever, then you have to be in right at the get-go. If you're someone who wants to just experience the story, you can pretty much play it whenever you want, but it does get easier as time goes on because they have so many catch-up mechanics that kick in. And there's always that feeling, and I've had this feeling many times where I was playing WoW every day for hours a day, and recognizing that my buddy who was in for Prague and then stopped playing entirely and is coming back 2 months down the line is going to have it, quote unquote, so easy to get caught up with things because of the mechanics that have been going on. The stuff that I grinded for hours and hours and hours for, I'm really getting, a month of time out of before they have full access to it because the catch-up mechanics kick in. So it's always been a game where you can like hop in later on down the line and earn something that took someone hours and hours and hours to earn. But they, sort of got the satisfaction out of earning that, 6 weeks or 8 weeks before someone else could, with the catch-up stuff that kicks in. So yeah, the game's always been that way. It always needs to be that way in the sense that there should be seasonal rewards. So obviously if you don't play during a season, you shouldn't be able to get the rewards. There definitely should be things like that. But in general, the game mechanics themselves around having gear and getting character power should be something that gets easier as the expansion goes on, because otherwise it's just too large of a hill for people to climb. But let's jump into what's going on this week, because I want to dive into what's going on this week. All right, Wrath of the Lich King Time Walking has kicked in. That means that Sign of the Scourge is up. The Wrath of the Lich King reputation gains from combat and quests are increased by 50%. And of course, there are time walking versions of Azul Narub, Gundrak, Halls of Lightning, Forge of Souls, Nexus, and Utgard Keep. And so if you're someone who wants to get yourself a cache of normal vault loot, feel free to complete 5 of those, pick up the quest in Valdrakken and get all that going. Ulduar time walking is also a thing. This is one of those time walking events that comes with a time walking raid, and it's dropping 389 eye level versions of max loot for characters. So that's your Ulduar loot. You can get in there and find some of your old favorites when it comes to that sort of stuff. And if that eye level is good for you, then go for it. Obviously, it's not amazing eye level, but it is that normal stuff that you could be looking at. The old achievements for Ulduar are actually 10 and 25 man achievements have been all rolled down into one little package. So if you go in there with your flexible raid of 14 people, you can earn all the achievements as opposed to needing to have 25 during the 25 man ones, that sort of thing. So yeah, overall, time walking week, good to see. We're out of the weird week of bonus quest and pet battling overlapping each other. So now we're into some time walking.
Yeah, and I've heard from people, from TSE listeners, that time walking dungeons are a pretty good leveling option. I haven't done any of that this expansion so far, but I feel like that's been fluid over the years. But there are these moments where time walking is kind of generous in terms of time investment to XP output. So it sounds like it's a pretty good option right now. And I think the way this dungeon pool is these days is pretty good. I mean, these dungeons are fast. They got rid of Pit of Sauron, which was the worst thing about Wrath of the Lich King time walking before. When they did the refresh last expansion, that was nice. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, now the normal vault loot cache can have pretty much anything in it. There are some really rare drop items on Vault's loot table, which might be interesting. You can even get the Hunter Bow from Razageth out of there, although it is 2 weeks away from getting nerfed. So that might just make you sad at this point if you get it. I'm not sure what's better, having never gotten one or getting one right before the big nerf, but or it's a bug fix, I guess, technically.
I think that's the loved or lost rule that falls into place there, Jason. Better to have loved and lost. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you squeeze a week and a half out of it, or yeah, I don't know, but yeah, it's a good event. I mean, these are great dungeons. This is obviously like one of the best periods of time in the history of the game, and Old War could be an option if you want a little variety. I don't personally, I haven't done it in a while, but I didn't think Old War time walking was like one of the the better feeling time walking raids. It felt really punishing for a smaller group, and the scaling felt a little weird. But this was a few years ago now, so just keep that in mind, I guess. If you're thinking of maybe slotting in some Old War time walking this week, try to bring as many friends as you can.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that with the fact that in 10.0.7 we have the Heritage Armors coming out, maybe that leveling up in time walking is something you want to do on your orc or human character to be sure you're having something that's unlocked the Heritage Armors, because that's something you could do if this is a good way to level. Now you have to be characters level 50 or above, so just as a heads up, you'll have to get to 50 in order to actually start progressing through these dungeons to level your character, but it might be a neat way to do it. Okay, we have Aiding the Accord that you need to be taking care of, so that's your reputation that you can earn from that, as well as the Siege on Dragonbane Keep, Norkhud Offensive, the Brackenhide Hollow are the other quests that you want to be picking up for your dungeons. And PvP-wise, we got Arena Skirmishes and Solo Shuffle. And of course, the Sparks of Life quests that you can pick up in Teldrassus as well. The Brawl for the week is Arathi Blizzard. And so this is obviously Arathi Basin, but it's winter, which we're all kind of tired of at this point, unless you live in like Chile or Australia, where it's currently hot, summery. It is it is frozen lake. The weather obstructs your view from one area to another inside of the map, so you can't like see what's happening at Blacksmith when you're up at Lumbermill. So it's, in general, kind of a cool one. Wow, I'm just making puns left, right, and center. It's kind of a cool one for people to check out and see. I don't know. It's never been like my favorite one. It was probably my first one where I was like, ooh, they get to test out weather effects. I want to see these weather effects in the game, as far as like out in the open world. And so I was excited that they were using this as like a sandbox to test that. At this point, I kind of want there to be more of a twist. I want there to be, fun things you can do, like roll yourself in a ball down a hill from Lumbermill and you get covered in snow and you bowl people over or something. Like, I don't know, like something silly.
Yeah, like actually change the environment somehow. That would be cool. Yeah, this one is like, was this the first Brawl that actually went live? Like, it's okay, but it's still AB. Like, it doesn't really change up the gameplay. And I think the Brawls that really change up the gameplay are the ones that are more interesting. So, it's okay. It's out there if you want to do something different for the week.
Yeah, like I get that it's for experimenting, and I get that it's great for Blizzard to have these opportunities with Brawls to test something out without it being something people take too seriously. But I feel like that I then want them to use these to be silly. Like I then want the goal to be, let's do something over the top and fun and ridiculous, and rolling yourself up into a giant snowball and rolling down the hill from Lumbermill and crashing into people would be hilarious. Like things like that would be funny. So.
Or let's just have Comp Stomp rotated more often then. If we're not
with
we're
the
gonna get,
Wrathy Blizzard,
super
just
wacky,
roll them together. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like do something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd be down for that. But in general, it was very cool when it first came out. I was very pumped about it, and it's just kind of been one of those ones that's come up every now and then. You're like, yeah, this is kind of the same thing, really. There's sort of some differences with the travel path changes because you can ride across the frozen water, and you can't quite see what's happening, so communication becomes a lot more important. But it's not like it's a massive shift that you're doing. There's no like giant PvE thing that you're defending while it pushes a cart toward the thing that you're like, there's nothing like that going on. Okay. Weekly world boss for the week is Basrakon, the Shale Wing, the big Earth Proto Drake in Waking Shores. Drop in your plate chest, mail wrist, leather feet, cloth waist, and a mastery crit neck, all up at $395. So good way to get some better than normal loot, well, about normal loot from your raid stuff. And then Mythic Plus wise, we got Fortified, Sanguine, and Volcanic. And so this means that non-boss enemies have more health and inflict increased damage. When slain, non-boss enemies leave behind a pool of Ichor that heals their allies and damages players. And while in combat, enemies periodically cause Goats of Flame to erupt beneath the feet of distant players. Key point there is distant players. So if you have one ranged DPS, that ranged DPS's life is going to be hard because they have to keep moving around because all the volcanoes spawn underneath of them. But in general, this is actually one of those weeks where things kind of line up together, but it's not something I would say is terrible. Fortified Sanguine means that because trash mobs have more health, if they happen to step inside Sanguine, they are gaining more health back, which then means that they, essentially are harder to kill, and it makes Sanguine kind of amplified in that way. However, that's the only thing Sanguine really does that's really bad. You don't have something like Grievous, where if someone steps inside a Sanguine pool, their health drops low, and then they get a Grievous stack, and you have to top them back off before they get too many Grievous stacks. That's not happening. You don't have, something like Fortified Bolstering, where suddenly all the enemies are, getting even more and even more health every time that something dies, and that becomes a problem. So like Fortified Sanguine is actually kind of a nice one. You can kind of just the pools don't last that long. As long as you're aware that they exist and keep, range mobs out of them by knocking them back, stunning them, that sort of thing. Fortified can almost work with you because those lower health mobs that might still drop Sanguine puddles have more health, which means you might actually have more time to move things away as those things die, so they're not standing inside a Sanguine puddle for a period of time. So I think this isn't a bad week for Fortified. Volcanic is just like a non-affix in the sense that as long as the person's paying attention, it's not terrible. Yes, again, this overlaps with Thundering, and if players are distant players and you have multiples of them and there's a bunch of volcanics around, they're trying to get to each other, and one of them gets knocked into the air and they stop being able to move, you got to be aware of your timing. Like, that exists as a thing that you got to be paying attention to, but it's still not like a terrible affix to deal with. So I think Fortified Sanguine is actually an okay week this week. I think you're doing well with your Fortifieds this week.
Yeah, it's okay. I think this one is it's a little bit more dungeon dependent. Sanguine always is a bit more dungeon dependent than some of the other affixes, because there are some tight quarters in some of these dungeons. Ruby Life Pools, I certainly think of. You have some really tight windows that you need to get mobs into and around, and you also have a lot of mobs especially in the Dragonflight dungeons, where you have packs with like ranged auto attackers and stuff that you can't displace. So you got to be careful with that. You have to plan ahead, and you have to have like emergency release valves for when there's a bad Sanguine. And then it's okay. And there really is no synergy between Sanguine and Volcanic, but Volcanic does happen on bosses. So even though it's easy boss week in terms of the scaling, Volcanic can present problem. I mean, a lot of these bosses are complicated in this pool, and they have a lot of area denial, and a Volcanic in the wrong spot can mess you up. So I think this one's middle of the road. Like, this isn't like the freebie push week combo, but it's also not like what we had last week, for example, where just doing keys at all just feels like not fun. Like you're just punishing your healer for even starting the key. So that's good. That's what we like. Yeah, I don't know. I think if you're looking to get into that, 15s range, you're working on Keystone Master or something, this is a fine week to try to get some fortified points. Just make sure you watch your positioning and get mobs moving when they start getting low health. And And yeah, it's gonna be worse in some dungeons depending on what you're fighting or the confines of where you're fighting.
Yeah, it's always hard in tight corridors. I always think back to a few of the Battle for Azeroth dungeons that just had these really nice tight corridors with sanguine puddles that you could not help but move through, and you're trying to pull enemies backwards, and sanguine puddles lasted longer, and so you ran out of space very quickly, and it got kind of hectic and crazy. So yeah, if you running inside those situations, just be aware of where you're going to be pulling enemies. I think that puts more onus. Sanguine always puts more onus on the tanks to sort of have an idea as to how they want to drag mobs around and where they want, and paying attention to their health for when they're going to die, and then where you want them to die, and positioning that just becomes something you have to think about.
For sure. If you're tanking a Keystone this week, that's your job. And if there's a bad sanguine, it's probably your fault, unless somebody ran up behind you and pushed the mobs in the wrong direction when you weren't expecting it.
Which happens.
Ultimately, it's on you. So you got to make sure the stuff is moving. You got to make sure stuff is safe for when sanguines go off, and you got to be ready to reposition, get LOS or something. That can be a really powerful tool if you're stuck. If you can get around a corner or something and make stuff move on you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to do that. Halls of Valor, I think, is a great example of that. You get those tight packs in that hallway that connects, the second, and third, and fourth and fifth bosses. And you got to use the geometry in there because you got auto attackers, you got casters. Bad sanguine goes down, and if you don't have a safety valve, you always have LOS for mobs like that. So get behind one of the big chairs or get around a corner or something and deal with it. But it is sanguine is almost entirely a tank problem. And if the tank fails, then it's a whole group problem, and it's a timer problem.
Yeah. All right. Also running this week is your Darkmoon Faire. So obviously last week we were talking about how to take advantage of Darkmoon Faire at the start of the month and what you were supposed to do. This week is just easy. You just wake up, get your Darkmoon Faire buffs, head out there into the world and do what you want to do. Just be sure you get all done before Saturday. All your weekly stuff wants to be done before Saturday while you have those buffs, because that's when it goes away. Take care of your professions. Head down there, chat with the folks at Darkmoon Faire about your professions. Make sure that you get the skill ups that you can, and the knowledge that you can. And then if you want to hang out and play some Minesweeper, or do some dance competition, or ride the races around, or do some pet battling, or earn some tokens to buy your dirigible, feel free to do all of that as well while you're down there. Okay, Un'Goro Madness. Un'Goro Madness is the micro holiday that is coming up. It is going to be from the 17th until the 19th, and you head out to Un'Goro Crater, and man, this is the one that I can't help but think of Hearthstone whenever we see, because there's adaptation that's in there, and that was a Hearthstone thing, and that they then incorporated into World of Warcraft. And so
yeah, it's funny because that's kind of how it came in. It's sort of this cross promotion with Hearthstone, because it was when the Return to Un'Goro set came out, and that was the keyword in that set was adaptation, and that's ancient history in Hearthstone.
I know.
It's kind of a legendary set. It was a set that a lot of people really liked and was really fun, and it's just a thing that happens in WoW every year, and it's weird. Time is stretchy, and this seems like just a natural thing in WoW, which is way older, and it's been around the same amount of time, but it's it doesn't seem moldy or weirdly out of place in WoW, but in Hearthstone it's the Un'Goro set is from another age.
Yeah, ages, exactly. It's after the Dark Ages, but it's still a long time ago. The Un'Goro Crater is a fun place to head out to. Basically, lots of really big dinos walking around that you can interact with. It's always a cool place to visit. And inside this case, there's crystals there. You can pick up the crystals. You can get adaptations, make your character all sorts of crazy, and have some fun times. So feel free to head out to Un'Goro Crater in that 17th to 19th window and have some fun if that's something you're looking to do in the game. As far as hotfixes go, we got some Dungeon and Raid ones for Court of Stars. Jasharyu's Shockwave visual and effect now more closely line up with each other when cast. So those two abilities line up better timing wise. Always nice to be able to plan for things.
Yeah, Court of Stars is old, right? It came out in 2016.
Yeah,
and they have had to kind of slap a new coat of paint on it here and there. It was one of the first Keystone dungeons back then. And we had different expectations for what a Keystone dungeon did back in 2016. we saw them kind of mess with the last boss's visual effects, and we've seen some other visual effects in there change. Jisharu is the Felguard like mini boss thing that you have to fight as you go around the, up to second boss and kill the enforcers and stuff. And it's the one that jumps and then it does the shockwave at the tank, but you can't really see what's happening and you just have to guess. I haven't done this since the hotfix came in, but I'm glad to see that they're touching this up because it's just felt too unpredictable to me. Like in 2016, 2017, 2018, it didn't feel as bad because Keystones were much simpler back then, as we sort of talked about at length last week. And so when you had these sort of pain points, it wasn't that big of a deal. It's like, okay, just get behind the thing and it'll be okay. So yeah, I don't know how this has been improved yet firsthand, but this is a thing that like they do not design stuff like this anymore.
Yeah.
Enemies do not do this kind of attack where it's like, well, there's a cone in front of them somewhere after they jump. Like, okay, like no. That's not how it gets designed. So it's nice to see the stuff getting touched up still.
Well, and as long as it's going to be inside the rotation or kicking around, like it's important that it does, so players aren't. Well, they're getting a more consistent experience, right? It's the trickiest thing about bringing back old content is making it feel at least somewhat as polished as some of the newer stuff that's out there. So when you get older abilities like this, yeah, it's important to touch them up so they will look right. Neko Defensive, the Raging Tempest, the electrical storm damage has been reduced by 20%, and the Surge of Power duration has been increased from 18 seconds to 20 seconds, as well as they also fixed an issue with Tira and Maruk, where the fight would reset if one of the bosses reaches 1 health before the other. Oh my god.
No, thank you. Yeah, that is not a good time to have the boss fight reset. There is no good time to have a boss fight reset, but
when it's
when
at
one
1
of them
health,
reaches 1 health is not the time.
Yep.
And yeah, the Tempest nerfs are nice. Electrical Storm is a key killer on Tyrannical. It is, can your healer to help you survive this? And the answer, increasingly, as you go up the ranks, is no. So cutting the damage is baseline 20% across all difficulties, presumably. That's how it was listed in the notes anyway. Like, should be great. Neko Defensive, I think, is actually a pretty cool dungeon. I actually like it. I think it's, I think as Keystones go in the current pool, I think it is maybe the Dragonflight dungeon that turned out the best so far as a Keystone. But yeah, I mean, bugs are no good, and Raging Tempest is the one that, the healers quake at the mere mention of Electrical Storm.
Yeah. Blazebound Firestorm's Inferno, cast by Kokia Blazehoof inside the Ruby Life pools, was reduced by 35% in its periodic damage. I love when periodic damage gets reduced as a healer. Oh my goodness, it's so nice.
Yeah. Yeah, this boss has been touched up quite a bit. The way RLP shipped was pretty intense. So this is the Kokia summons the fire ads. That's the Blazebound Firestorm, and they cast Inferno at the group. Her abilities were nerfed, and this is a very intense fight. It's short, but there's a lot of movement, and it's very disorienting and very punishing. So, yeah, I'm not going to complain about continued nerfs to these Dragonflight dungeons.
Yeah. As far as Neko Defensive, there's one other change I want to mention, which is Onara now counts as a lower priority target for certain healing spells. It means that your healing spells are more likely to land on targets that they should be landing on. So kind of a nice thing to see. I like that, because when something can target 5 targets and you hit an NPC with it and it now doesn't heal the 5th target, that's sad.
Right. Like, I don't think healing Onara is something you really need to be doing. Like, you need to be defeating the boss and keeping your team alive. So yeah. Good change.
Yep. As far as 10.0.7 content goes, moving into the more exciting stuff that's kicking off, it has a release date. It's going to be March 21st, so we are like 1.5 weeks away at this point. So it's coming up fast. And just to recap, what we've talked about this patch quite a bit over a period of time, but to recap some of the stuff that's happening, Forbidden Reach is going to be an area that you get to go to, and there's more story content that sort of expands from there. It'll be something that you probably go back to on a daily basis. So be sure that you're checking out Forbidden Reach and what that content's going to look like for you for a little while. embrace your orc and human legacy with their new heritage armors. So that's why I was mentioning, hey, you might want to level up an orc or a human from scratch to unlock all of the heritage armor stuff that you get to kick in and have fun with. We talked about the Furbolg faction, the Winterpelt Furbolgs that are going to be up and about and around that you can actually earn reputation with and eventually learn how to speak their language over time, which is kind of cool. The monk class is getting some new races added to it, so you can actually be a goblin, a Lightforged Drene, or a Worgen, all added to the monk class. So if that's something you were looking to spice up your life as your monk is, you can do some swap around of your races, or you can actually just start a new one. And then there's a new quest line that actually goes around with, sort of revolves around Bane Bloodhoof. So you can pick that one up. That's going to be in the Anaran Plains area. And then they are doing a Recruit a Friend refresh, where the rewards for Recruit a Friend are getting updated. So if you're someone who is looking at bringing someone back to the game who's been away for a while, or you just want to use this on your other account so that you can get all the rewards, like a lot of people do, that's something that you can do with the refresh of the rewards coming up. So be sure that you're checking all the new stuff that's going to be happening. Obviously, when this actually drops on the 21st, we'll do like an in-depth thing with all the blogs and stuff that come out around it. But we just wanted to, give everyone the heads up about the release date that's coming out 21st.
Yeah, this is a little bit earlier than I thought. I mean, I figured it would be soon, but I was thinking more like early April-ish. So this is probably 2-3 weeks earlier than I realistically thought that it would ship, which is cool. This is not a massive patch, but that's fine. I think that I don't think WoW needs a massive patch in order to justify being updated. And we talk about it not infrequently, but that was Legion have the .5s that were these like relatively minor patches, but they would unlock stuff and they would add cool little features and stuff to do, which really helped flesh out the expansion over the course of those 2 years. So there's definitely stuff that regardless of what kind of player you are, you're going to want to do some stuff here. You're probably going to want to check out the Forbidden Reach stuff, even if you're sort of done gearing or whatever. And also, yeah, the Malahai Mountain Bane Bloodhoof, quest line. Heritage armors are super cool. I love that feature, and I've collected all of them so far, so I will be working on the orc and human ones at some point. Yeah, it's just cool stuff. Nice little touches here and there, and there's obviously class tuning and updates. We've talked a lot about that stuff as it's sort of rounded into form, and the more frequent patches are more opportunities to make bigger changes to classes, which is cool. So yeah, this patch isn't gonna change your goalposts for season 1, right? We're still in season 1. If you have achievements you want or thresholds you're trying to hit, this doesn't change that. It might make it a little bit easier, maybe, if you get some of the stuff out of Forbidden Reach, or I don't know, if you want to use a different racial or something. Somehow the goblin racial for the monk is the key to success for what you're trying to do. Then you can do that now. That could be a weird stealth buff.
I mean, if you can torpedo into rocket boots, like that's a thing,
Right. Yeah. Maybe that's why you can't survive the pushback on Razageth, is because you just missed that one. You need that one more movement ability. Mm-hmm. Could be. But yeah, I'm looking forward to playing through the one-time stuff here with the story questing and everything. They released the in-game cinematic. I don't know if it's a trailer or whatever. It's sort of it's
a teaser.
It's a story,
is what I would say.
Yeah, it's a story cinematic, I guess, for going out to Forbidden Reach. They put that on YouTube yesterday, and it's awesome. Like the animation is so nice. Like how far they've come with the tools for that kind of stuff in the last 10, 15 years. The animation is awesome. The models of the new characters are super cool looking, and it kind of sets the stage for how 10.0.7 is going to lead into 10.1, which is cool. So check that out if you haven't. And I mean, I played through Forbidden Reach in pre-patch when I started my Evoker, and I thought that zone was awesome looking. So I'm interested to see what we're going to be doing there and sort of what the loop looks like, because it's a super nice zone. It seems like there's a lot of potential for it to be a fun little hub for, I don't know, 3 months, to however long this patch lasts, which is probably not going to be all that long. So it seems perfect, right? You get a little island, just bury some treasure on it and let players mess with it for a couple months. Like I think that having that kind of cycle of content release is great for WoW, and it's something we're not really used to.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that this definitely felt faster than I thought we were going to see 10.0 to 7. I thought it was going to be April. So it's nice to sort of see that it's a few weeks ahead or a couple weeks ahead of when I expected it to be. So it's nice to have that extra bit of content injection coming into the game, which will get people online a little bit more. And then, and obviously if that content can even carry over, even just add an extra month. So even if it just brings people to get into May, if they can just get to May, then we're probably going to be starting to see 10.1 soon. So that's the exciting thing for a lot of players. Okay, let's talk about Recruit a Friend a little bit, because they changed up the system a bunch. So now you can actually recruit up to 10 friends, is what you can have on your account. And you still have a 30-minute summons. You're still able to basically summon yourself or summon a friend to you or you to them once every 30 minutes, so that can still happen. You still get rewards when your friends actually pay for game time, so that still progresses you into their sort of system. If you think of like the renown system where you're moving along a bar getting rewards, it's a similar concept that they're sort of going with this. Some of the rewards are the volatile self-diving toolbox pet, the shredderizing glove cosmetic item, the sappy buddy cosmetic item, the 30-day game time reward that you get, the scanner MK3 cosmetic item, and then the shredder 9001. It's over 9,000 mount. So those are all based off the months. So obviously month 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 6. And as far as game time goes, after your 6-month reward, you'll be awarded 30 days of game time for every 3 months of your recruits are subbed, up to a total of 12 months per recruit. So like 12 months per recruit, which means you could technically get 10 years of game time if everyone bought this. Like that's what this means. Like your Recruit a Friend system, if you actually had 10 friends who'd never played the game before and you got them hooked on World of Warcraft for every 3 months they're subbed, you get 30 days. So you'd have to get them subbed for a year. If you can get them subbed for like a year, you can basically earn 10 years of game time. Kind of a crazy system, but man.
Yeah, it's like not the maybe the most lucrative multi-level marketing scheme in existence, but if you could get all those signups and all that sub time, then you don't have to worry about your sub for quite a while.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that the thing that surprised me is it felt almost a little bit like when I first read it, I was like, man, it's a little bit predatory. Like they're trying to get people to get 10 people. Like for every one person they get 10 people. Like who's doing the like pyramid scheme graph on the board when they're thinking about Recruit a Friend, right? But when it comes down to it, you can get these rewards with just having one friend actually sub to it. It's really the game time that's the continuation and advantage of having a lot of people doing it, or you'll earn these rewards a lot faster if you get a lot of people doing it. So it's a curious thing, but I find it funny that you could like that the actual max reward is these 6 things and 10 years of sub time to World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I wonder if anybody's actually going to hit that threshold, but. So now a cool thing about this is the current system that we have is very similar to this, but it's spread out way farther, and it's 12 months of recruited friends purchasing game time to get all the way through the one-time rewards.
Right.
So this cuts it all the way down to 6 months, which is a lot more manageable. They have changed the theming. The theming currently is like sort of a Indiana Jones type of thing, like the League of Explorers League kind of thing, which is cool and very unique. This stuff is more of like a goblin engineering theme with the shredder and everything like that, which is also cool. And I assume the shredder works like other shredders, like you can gather from it and stuff. So that's a really nice bonus to have. I am in the midst of the Recruit a Friend track with a buddy of mine who returned after a while, like last year, and I am not all the way through it. So I'm wondering if I am going to just lose my progress on that without finishing that track and switch over to this one, or if I'm going to get, I don't know, is it going to finish that track until I recruit somebody on a new link? I that's unclear to me, but I guess it really, there's nothing I can do about it, so it doesn't matter either way. Maybe I could influence my buddy to buy the rest of the time that I need, or send him some WoW gold so we can buy tokens to do it or something. I don't know, just to finish the track and then be done with it. But my only complaint here is that the caveat is you have to recruit new players or returning players in good standing who have not had active game time on their account for the past 2 years. That is way too long. This is way too long.
Yeah.
And you just shipped an expansion 3 months ago, 4 months ago, whatever it is. So a lot of people who probably had not touched their account for 2 years, maybe they heard not great things about Shadowlands and they went, I'm not going to jump in. Maybe they heard good things about Dragonflight. Well, maybe they activated their account and played for like a week, but their friends weren't around. You know? They're locked out of the system. I think 2 years is way too. I think this should be like 6 months at most.
Max. Yeah, I agree. I think a 4 month cycle is actually more what I would look at. If someone hasn't been subscribed to World of Warcraft for 4 months, they should qualify for the Recruit a Friend program. I mean, are you really losing that much market value by doing that? I don't know. Like, I'd have to really look at the math and the numbers on it, but I feel like more players is better when it comes to this sort of thing. And if you can recruit people back after 4 months and have them play for even 2 months or 3 months, that's probably worth giving players cosmetic items in games as a reward, and potentially like maybe a month of game time for that amount of time that they renew for. Like,
right.
Yeah.
There's only one game time bonus in this chart, right? Yeah. Like up through the 6 month thing. And so like, then it's,
1 month for 3.
That's 1 month for 3. Right. Yeah. So like you still got 3 paid months. Blizzard's still making out on that deal, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is with the kind of schedule that content releases are on, if you're going to get somebody back in and playing, more than likely, they probably check in more frequently than once every 2 years. An expansion comes out once every 2 years, right? Like, if you have somebody who might be interested in this, who has played the game before, they have probably played in the last 2 years. So, I mean, it could be good for brand new players. It's great for everybody involved, but brand new players are elusive, obviously, with a game that's as old as WoW. So, I don't know. I feel that was the thing that I thought that they would maybe reduce with the refresh, and I'm sad that they didn't.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's not all we got to talk about on the show. We also got the big old looking ahead post for .1, and actually them talking a little bit about what that's going to look like. Got some pictures of things. So starting off, we get a new zone called Zaralek Cavern. It actually has a bit of a Deep Home kind of feel to it, I think. So it's kind of neat to sort of see some of the images coming out of this place. A lot of really like browns and reds, and then this like teal sort of feel to it. So I'm curious as to how that's going to look and feel, because I actually really dug Deep Home when we were there for a while. It was a pretty good time. Along with that, we're going to get a new raid, which is called Aberrus, the Shadow Crucible. I feel like everyone's just going to call it Shadow Crucible. I feel like Aberrus the is just going to get dropped. Maybe you might get the Shadow Crucible, but I think it's going to be Shadow Crucible to most people. So
ASC. I'm just going with ASC.
ASC? Yeah, you think so?
Yeah. I'm not even going to initialize the T. I don't have time for that. It's ASC.
Okay. Got it. And we got some pictures of that out in the blog post as well, showing off what looks like a very Twilight Citadel style kind of dragon themed space, as you'd expect, but more in the reds than in the purples kind of range, because it's much more fiery and lava-y happening down in there. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. Obviously, it's going to have normal, heroic, and mythic difficulties. There's going to be LFR for it. It's, they're advertising it as this really neat sort of epic new raid, which we all sort of expect, but we'll hear more about that down the line. There's going to be raid testing and everything else that kicks in. Best guess is sometime in the next 3 weeks, we see this start showing up on, like 10.1, start showing up on the PTR, and then we start having, or maybe it's the week, maybe it's like literally after the 21st when 10.07 drops, we suddenly get PTR the same day. Like, that could happen. And then obviously we're probably a month out from raid testing kicking in after that, where we actually get real looks at what these bosses are going to be. But they did show us some tier sets. So we got to look at, the Monk, Demon Hunter, and Evoker, Druid, Warrior, and Shaman, Mage, Rogue, and Warlock, and Death Knight, Priest, and Paladin. Those are how the tokens are all lined up, in case you hadn't figured that part out yet. But at those sort of armor sets, they are all spiky. Every single one of them is spiky. They all have spikes in all sorts of different directions.
Spikiest preset ever made.
It's very like so. Okay, the paladin and presets to me, I actually can't quite tell which one is which. The way they have them lined up is you're like Death Knight. Okay, that stands out. You know which one's the Death Knight. Then they go priest, and the priest to me looks like a paladin set. It is this like bulky metal armor with these like flying out wings and a halo behind them, which looks really cool, but it looks paladin-y to me. And then they show the paladin one, which is substantially more bland than the previous one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, which artist here loves priests and hates paladins?
Somebody, yeah. I mean, the paladin one's okay, but yeah, the priest one would be the best paladin set behind Judgment if it was a paladin set.
Yeah.
But it's not, so it's a very cool preset.
It is. It's very cool. I hope that some of these sets, as it looks like they do, have a lot of effects going to them. And so the Paladin one might actually have a really cool effect to it that we're just not able to see because it's a still image. So once we get these things data mined out and people start playing around with them on Wowhead and whatnot, we'll start seeing what some of these look like in motion, and there could be some neat Radiance style effects coming off of them. I will say the Warlock one is like the most finned Warlock thing I've seen in a while. It's kind of neat to see that they sort of went like, yeah, we're going to do like underwater demon, but also spiky purple because it's Warlock. And you're like, okay, cool. All right, let's see that. I think Druid one to me is actually one of my favorites. It's kind of crazy looking. It's got one of the most extreme helmets we've seen in a tier set in a while. That is essentially like a plate helm with horns that like arc backwards behind you. And it's a bulkier set, but has your midriff exposed because really what you want is to not protect your vital organs. You protect everything else but your vital organs. You need to have those abs showing off.
You have to be connected to nature. Gonna look great
through your belly button. That's directly how druids do it. It's directly connected from the belly button.
That's true. Yeah. The detail on it is amazing though. Like I love the leaves peeking out from under the skirts and all that. Like, yeah. The sets look great. I think the warrior set is, it's sort of like a dragon motif on plate armor. It's like a knight with like a dragon motif, and it reminds me a bit of last tier of Cataclysm meets like second tier of Mists of Pandaria, which those are good things. Those are two sets I really liked, and this has vibes that kind of smash them together into a thing that sort of has its own silhouette and personality. You get the big dragon horns curling out the back, and really cool. The Rogue set really reminds me of Tier 5, which is like such a classic, legendary Rogue set. Looks kind of like Shredder from Ninja Turtles.
Yes, exactly.
It's super cool. They did, I like the Hunter set with the asymmetrical shoulders, which Hunters always get, and I'm always jealous of. Just some really cool looks across the board. And one thing I want to point out is that like this is sort of a new thing lately since Zereth Mortis is, hey, we have a new patch coming out. There's going to be new class sets. Here's what they all look like. So it's awesome that they showed us this when they announced the patch instead of going like, there'll be new sets and then like bits and pieces of them get leaked out via, data mining and, the parts of them show up on Wowhead one at a time.
And people are guessing which classes they're for. And
like that was always, I didn't like that. Like it's the big patch announcement. Do stuff that's exciting. You know what the sets look like. Show them to us, and that's what they've been doing the last 3 times now. So that's like a philosophy shift that I'm very into.
Yeah, that's the one thing you pointed out. The one thing I'm going to point out is that the Hunter, Druid, Warrior, and Shaman sets all have toes, which I think is a bizarre thing to see on boots right now for some reason.
Well, I mean the Warrior going with the dragon motif, so they look like dragon claws, right? The Druid set kind of looks like it's sculpted bark or something is sort of what they're going for. So you have like the talons kind of sculpted in it.
The Shaman one's got like they were cast inside of a mold and then put over top of the toe of your boot. And then I don't know what's going on with the Hunter ones, to be honest. They have like individual actual toes.
I mean, Hunters they do what they got to do, man.
Hunter's gonna hunt, That's
it helps them probably out in the bush or whatever. Crawling over a log. I don't know.
Got those toe shoes. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but that's basically what these are.
I think that's what they're doing. Yeah.
There's going to be more dragon riding customization that kicks in, and they're basically adding a whole new sort of shape to the dragon that you can choose to get. This is a much more serpent-like dragon. So you sort of have like a arced up head with the pronounced chest that sticks forward, creating that S shape, that classic dragon S shape. for a lot of dragons that are out there. They're cool looking. I'm down for it. I fully accept that what we're looking at when we see the 3 images that they showed us is really just the shape of the dragon, because we already know like claws, horns, teeth, colors, eyes, like it's all customizable, and all of those are going to be able to be applied to these shapes, right? So you're going to have these different shapes of dragons, these 3 different primary shapes that you can then just throw all your other customizations onto. So again, the system just keeps expanding and expanding, and it's pretty cool to check out.
And I'm sure there'll be a lot of new stuff to unlock too behind it. Like you'll have, this is a whole new dragon riding mount to unlock stuff for. I actually really like these. I kind of glanced over them yesterday. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I got my Highland Drake, but now that I'm really looking at these, like I think this might be the winner for next patch. Like it just has such a distinct silhouette, and I think it really fits the theming. Like when I think of Neltharion, I think of the Black Dragonflight and some of the theming around this stuff. Like this silhouette seems to fit that really well, and I always like to kind of match the way my character looks and the stuff that I'm using to like kind of match it to the theme of whatever we're playing in that particular patch. So these are really neat. I mean, not really a lot of information about like how we acquire it, but it sounds like it's just doing the Zaralik Cavern stuff, I assume through a quest line or whatever. We'll just get it. It's not like there was some random drop acquisition to the existing dragon riding mount. So I assume that we'll get rewarded this from just participating in the content.
As far as Mythic Plus goes, we got the roster of dungeons that people are going to be checking out. So we got Brackenhide Hollow, Halls of Infusion, Legacy of Tyr, which I'm not looking forward to, but it's it's there. Neltharion.
5 bosses. Don't like the 5 boss.
It's also a really big place. Naltharis. That's what it is. Oh my goodness, my brain wants to put an I in there. It really wants to put a Rias on the end of this, but no, it's Naltharis. Freehold. Holy crap. Freehold is back. Everyone's going to be rejoicing that Freehold is back.
We missed you, Freehold.
Oh
we
my
love
God.
you forever, Freehold. Yes.
Everyone is going to be rejoicing Freehold is back. Underrot, which I think some people will too. It was a fast dungeon. It was one that, with particular affixes, sucked. But it's also one that I think is pretty fast, and depending on what we see as far as the new seasonal goes, or what they choose to do with that, it'll be curious to see how that all feels for a lot of players. Vortex Pinnacle from back in Cataclysm is coming back. Man, that is...
I don't know about that one.
That one,
that one might have a long way to go to actually feel like a Keystone dungeon, which maybe that's good for play. I don't know. This was a surprise inclusion for me. Like, what are we doing? Doing Cataclysm Keystones? But I could kind of see it for this place because there's enough variety, but it's also short, so like they can tweak it. I mean, we saw pretty significant reworks to like Jade Serpent, to make it more like a Keystone, and it's definitely a Keystone. So, I just remember
Vortex Pinnacle for a few things. One is the dragon boss that puts people to sleep with sleep clouds, but also knocks people back and pushes them around a whole bunch. All of the jumping through the little wind wisp things that move you around. There's like a lot of that takes place. Some trash that was a bit rough, knocking people around and knocking people off of the platform. But then, of course, the benefit of seeing this fall back in the rotation is they might just put the mount in the reward box at the end that people can actually get.
Yeah.
So maybe you'll finally get your, Vortex Pinnacle mount, because those dragons looked really cool. So I'd be down for getting that. I think it's the Dragon of the North or whatever it was. North Winds, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. And you know what? Freehold and Underrot also had mounts.
Yeah, that's true.
That could be cool for if they drop in Dragonflight Keystones.
Yeah.
Now there was some suggestion, and now I guess we should preface this with Blizzard actually didn't release that much info about 10.1 yesterday via official channels. Yeah. There was this blog post, and there was a post that we're all going to talk a little bit about as well. And that was it. And most of it was through creator interviews, which is cool, but its stuff is kind of scattershot, and it's kind of hard to know what's official and what is the actual message going out. And we didn't do any press this round, which is fine. I don't even know how we would have been able to schedule it if we were invited. But so we don't have any insight into this stuff at this point in time. But it sounds like they are not going to do a seasonal affix for season 2.
It's sounding
Which-
that way. Yeah.
rules if that's the case, in my opinion. And I've had some debates with people in TSC Discord and in my guild's Discord, because some people really like the seasonal affix, but my whole thing is the seasonal affix existed to solve the problem of having a static dungeon pool for 2 years. We do not have a static dungeon pool for 2 years, and therefore we as a society have progressed past the need for a seasonal affix. Now, the problem is, in Shadowlands especially, they started leaning way into the Kiss Curse thing with the seasonal affixes. And so people got used to, like, oh, I get to do this stuff that's like OP in Keystones, and that's fun. And that's kind of cool in a way, but I never really loved having to rely on that in order to succeed in Keystones.
Yes.
I want my character to be my character.
Yeah.
And I want to succeed in Keystones based on the choices I made before I went in, the choices I made moment to moment in gameplay, and the overall tuning and balance of the game.
Yeah,
Relying on the stats from something like that.
I agree that these systems, as far as the seasonal affix goes, should have been something that was implemented as far as like the process in which they did balancing and tuning after you were able to complete a 20. So in the concept of you should be able to do a 20 without the benefit of the seasonal affix entirely, very much a timeable thing for you to do to get your portal reward. And the seasonal affix is just going to help you get there if you actually choose to use it. It is an additional benefit for a Kiss Curse situation. It isn't in order to do a 20, you really need to take advantage of this Kiss Curse mechanic. I don't think that should be the situation. That's just me. But I feel like when systems are implemented that way, I often enjoy them much more than when they're implemented in a way where I have to take advantage of them, and the slightest mistake or the little thing that happens is just, it's over, right? It's just, sorry, you're done. That to me is less fun than being like, yeah, you know what? This is here because when we use it, it makes us a lot stronger, and that's just fun to sort of kick around and enjoy. And I find that more entertaining for this kind of stuff. So if they are in fact not doing a seasonal affix, like we discussed for 2 weeks on this show, then great. It's perfect.
I'm ready to say goodbye to it. I just don't like it. I think there's way too much stuff going on in Keystones and Dragonflight Season 1, and it's not fun as you kind of ascend the ladder, in my opinion. And I love Keystones. I mean, it's one of my favorite things to do in the game, and they feel like a slog right now. So I'm looking forward to a refresh. I'm looking forward to a philosophy change. It sounds like we can expect some reworks with the level 7 affixes as well, which is probably good. Although it sounds like Fortified and Tyrannical are probably not on the docket for changes, which I do still think is kind of a mistake.
Get rid of them
because
too.
we live in a world with the really high per rank scaling. I think we'd be better off just cutting those affixes, bumping the baseline up for Mythic +2, and then just scaling them from there if you want to keep the higher per rank scaling, or bump the per rank scaling back down and keep the rotation, but not both. Overall, good.
That's what I say. On that same point, I'm still going to emphasize what I want to see them do: get rid of no more seasonal affix, no more Tyrannical or Fortified, 2 affix the way that we have currently the remaining 2 affixes. Scale up the difficulty of Mythic Plus, but move all the rewards down. So, have the top end to actually get your mount be a 15, right? Make that a 15, and have the maximum rewards you get before that be at 10s. And so it's not that you're trying to get to do 20s, because I still feel like there is this looming, intimidating thing for a lot of players of, hey, you know what? I don't want to get into Mythic Plus because these people are out there running 20s and 22s, and I just ran a Mythic 0 and got a 1. How am I ever going to carry this key up to being a 20? Or, I've only ever done 7s. That's so miles away. People are doing 3 times that number in Keystone. I can't imagine ever doing something that challenging. Whereas I feel very much if they shifted all the numbers down substantially, even if they brought it down to the mounts at the teleports are at 12, right? And you get the Keystone Master at 8s. That would still be fine with me to shift them all dramatically down, so that 1s, 2s, and 3s were something that actually scaled up more dramatically, and we saw that shift be higher. But it meant that when people are running their 4s for the week or their 5s for the week, and that's sort of feeling like it's you're doing okay, doesn't seem like a 12 is super crazy, ridiculously far away like it is for running your sevens for the week, and there's a 20 that you have to try and get to. And it would just make the system faster for a lot of players too, because you're not ending up in a situation where you have to push a key and push a key and push a key and push a key to get up to a point where you actually want it to be. It's, you're pushing a key once or twice, and then you're actually up to that number if you're very good at doing keystones. So,
there's so many breakpoints in the current system. That I do think that is a problem. I think that might be a little bit less tackleable at this point in time, but I think they have some opportunity there, especially with some of the other changes that are on the docket. I do think that I think the pool looks pretty good for season 2. Like, we knew we were going to have this set. Obviously, it's the other Dragonflight dungeons, right? And that's going to remain to be seen how they feel when they come out. I think a lot of people probably have some feelings about, like, Brackenhide Hollow, for example. So we'll see. Freehold's a slam dunk. We love Freehold. Underrot, it can be pretty challenging with certain bosses. The bosses in there are no joke. And Underrot was great in Awakened season, where you could make the wormemholes around the dungeon.
Yeah.
It was really bad in the one with the Ashara emissaries, where you had to pull stuff you didn't want to pull.
And with the Gahoonies. You remember the Gahoonies back then?
Yeah. Anyway, about my distaste for seasonal affixes, except for Awakened. Awakened was the best one, I think. Vortex Pinnacle remains to be seen what that's going to feel like. Neltharian's Lair, I love. One of my favorite dungeons ever. Perfect for this season, too. Like, great theming. It's just that's a fun one. And it was a good keystone back then. It may need a little bit of new coat of paint to be a modern keystone, but we'll see. I overall, I look at it and I go, yeah, okay, I'm happy with this. There's a couple dungeons I really like to see. We knew we were going to have these other 4 Dragonflight dungeons, and off we go. And I love the idea of not having a seasonal. One thing I want to go back to a couple things about Zaralek Cavern. It sounds like from what we're hearing, there's like some new tech involved in how you get there. It's not like, oh, you take like a boat there, or there's like a flight master that offers to send you there or whatever. It sounds like in 3 of the Dragonflight zones, there are just entrances to get underground into the cavern, which
your
is
manhole
awesome.
covers you peel back.
Yeah, it's just like the zone exists underneath the whole island, which is like, that's such a cool concept for outdoor WoW. That's something we've never seen before. We've seen a lot of stuff over the years. We've never seen that. So I think it'll be cool to see how that kind of comes together. I
want to see that, and I want to see them do the reverse, where they have a skybox that's over top of the island that stuff takes place in. Like, it's the same concept of, we're talking about Vortex Pinnacle, right? Where you literally fly up away from land into this, essential, like, I don't know, I almost would say celestial gates that you sort of fly through, because it's all up on clouds, and then you're suddenly, fighting up in the clouds. I think it'd be neat to have them, as you said, explore what takes place above and below the ground as actual more terrain that they can design things around, where players can go and explore things.
Yeah, I mean, this if this works out pretty well, it could open the door to all kinds of different concepts for what outdoor WoW means. Like, I think it fits the theming of this so well. Neltharion. Neltharian's such an interesting character in the the transformation into Deathwing, the connection to the Earth and Azeroth itself, and the World Soul Titan, and that whole storyline, the Old God corruption. That's so rich for mining these story elements and for these elements to explore in the game, So I think the theming is really cool the more I think about it. I'm excited to have our new mole buddies, the Niffin. I always like the little creature races in the game, and the Niffin look pretty cool. The Drogbar are coming back. See also my Neltharian's Lair comment. So I think all around the theming, there's a lot of stuff to be excited about. I want to point out also the raid is 9 bosses, which is great. I am here for 8 and 9 boss raids. The bigger raids feel a little bit gnarly after a while. I think it's okay at the very end of an expansion if you need to stretch the content. But for, mid-tier raids, I don't think we need like 12 bosses. I think 9 sounds pretty good. And I do want to point out that normal, heroic, and mythic are all releasing at the same time again. And I don't know, man. I don't think that worked out too great for Vault, and I don't think they should keep doing it. I don't think it really serves anybody's purposes particularly well. And like, they still have that weird kind of ramp up week with certain things anyway. So why not just hold Mythic back, give everybody a chance to just do Heroic or do whatever they're doing, get as far as they're getting, and just kind of get their bearings and get the team some data on like how raiders are actually looking in actual raid content, right? For the new bosses, can do some, appropriate tuning and stuff before people even see anything. I feel like it was a cool experiment, especially for like the first raid, which like we knew was going to be, a little wacky. Obviously, a lot of changes coming in. I don't know. I guess I could understand from Blizzard's perspective that they're not ready to say that simultaneous release of all 3 difficulties was like a failure. So they want to try to run it out again, but I'm just not sure who it serves. Who benefits from having Mythic available the week 1 along with normal and heroic? And I'm not sure what the answer to that is. The world first racers really didn't like it, and they don't seem too enthused about it coming back. And other than that, I'm not sure who it's even for. So I don't know. Maybe this will continue to be a short-lived experiment, and this is round 2. Or maybe they land more square this time, and it's a better experience for everybody.
Maybe. I mean, from a world first raider, sort of perspective from the ones I've talked to, I think a lot of it just came down to with how mushed together everything was. There was so much less prep. It was just like immediacy of tons and tons and tons of things to do at the same time, and it meant you're raiding essentially like even more hours than you normally would. Like it was very strange. It was a very strange experience to sort of watch it happen. So I can understand them sort of being like, no, we kind of want the old way back that we've planned for and done for years, and are change is bad. I don't like it. And in this case, I agree with them that I think that they probably could go back to the old model, and it would probably be a pretty nice thing for a lot of people. So we'll, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. I just wanted to point out one more 10.1 thing that I noticed while we were talking. There is a 10.1 PTR client live in your launcher right now. There are no servers to connect to, but it's weird because now we have 2 different PTR builds on time. PTR live at the same time. But this is WoW in 2023 apparently, so I would guess that we'll have servers for PTR probably before the next time we record, so we might have some more stuff to report back on. It's pretty awesome. It's almost a little bit too much, but
how many versions of WoW do you want on your computer?
Yeah, because you could have a lot between retail and classic and all of the PTRs and what have you. But yeah, so like they're moving with this stuff, which is it's a huge change of pace, which I think it's nice for us, but man, I don't know how sustainable it is, and I don't know like how we can wrap our heads around this many changes all this quickly. But I think the game kind of needed it. We've been through many years of like just stuff doesn't change as fast as it needs to.
Yeah. All right. Well, it is a big news week, and I guess we'll squeeze one more thing in here that we really want to actually get into a bit. This is the new upgrade system that they're talking about. All right. So one of the things, this is this post from Developer Insight, and they say one of the features in the Embers of Neltharion, that's the name of the 10.1 patch content update content update, not patch. We were poked ages ago about how they're trying to reformulate how they say things.
If you're listening, Blizz PR, we're sorry. We meant content updates.
Yes. That they're rolling out for Dragonflight Season 2. This is a new upgrade system that will replace many various upgrade systems currently in place, such as Valor and Stormgear, with a single system that covers most of the game. This system will last for the duration of Season 2, and after that, they'll evaluate how well it's working and whether they want to keep it. So the gnome-sized version that they put in here is the basics of this system are simple. You'll earn a new currency called Flintstones. Oh my god, this feels like we're reading some sort of like, it's actually Flightstones. I just feel like calling them Flintstones because I feel like a lot of people are going to.
They're like the vitamins.
The vitamins, that's right. It's the new currency. Yes, they're called Flightstones. From just about anything you do, complete a world quest, kill a unique creature, or run a mythic keystone dungeon, kill a raid boss, etc. You'll also get items called Shadowflame Crests, or fragments of them, which come in 4 varieties from different content levels. Shadowflame Crests and their fragments will also come from a wide range of content, including outdoor, gameplay, Mythic Plus, and raids. you'll be able to upgrade almost any item in Season 2's max level gameplay ecosystem, whether it comes from a world quest or a mythic raid boss, by spending, I really want to say Flintstones again, Flightstones and Shadow Flame Crests. There are 3 categories of gear that are not part of the system. The first is crafted gear, which will be upgraded using the recrafting system, much the same as it's done now. The other kind of gear not included in the system is PvP gear. PvP gearing will continue to work as it did Dragonflight Season 1. The final kind of gear not available from these upgrades is the very top end of gear. Anything that's an item level comparable to a mythic raid isn't going to be upgradable. If you want the very best gear and get into the Hall of Fame for a new raid, you'll still need to earn gear from drops, the same as you do now. The most important thing to keep in mind is that everything here is optional. You don't ever need to upgrade gear with this system. You'll still see gear drops at the same rates. The system is meant to augment and supplement your gearing journey, not replace it. The old gods are in the details. With a system this wide in scope, the details matter. So here they are for you. Flightstones themselves are already obtained from just about everything you do in game. There's no weekly cap, so if you're running low and want more, you can always continue playing the game and you'll get more. You'll be limited on how many you can hold, though the holding cap is relatively high at roughly 5 times the cost of most upgraded pieces. So in other words, you can carry as many Flightstones as you could upgrade 5 pieces of gear. But since you can spend them freely and earn them freely, as long as you're using them to upgrade your gear, there's no practical limit to the number you can earn. So in other words, you can earn as many as you want in your day-to-day content, as long as you're not hitting the cap that you can hold. So just use them as you get them if you really want to. There's no harm in doing so. Shadow Flame Crests come in 4 varieties: Whelpling's Shadow Flame Crests, Drake's Shadow Flame Crests, Worm's Shadow Flame Crests, and Aspect's Shadow Flame Crests. So Whelpling, Drake's, Worms, and Aspects. If you're upgrading an item to an item level that corresponds to the equipment you get from Raid Finder, you'll need to spend one of the Whelpling ones per upgrade. Upgrading an item level from normal raid is Drake's, and heroic is Worms, and mythic raid is Aspects. Similarly, those levels of content are where you'll find most of the crests themselves, with additional options for Whelplings, Drakes, and in non-instance outdoor gameplay. So you can find additional Whelpling and Drake stuff just out in the world, which is actually kind of nice if you're considering that, those are for your Raid Finder and normal content. Be able to find those out in the world is nice to be able to push gear up to normal raid content.
That's the thing we've seen in this current patch, which is, it's a nice thing to be able to just kind of bypass, or at least get up to the point where you're okay for normal raid without having to do like LFR or having to do some longer tail grind necessarily. Like you go do Primal Storms and you can get yourself ready for normal vault. And it sounds like you'll have this option when it comes to ASC for Season 2 to use outdoor stuff. I think it's weird that there's a cap at all, but it sounds like it's really high, and it also sounds like the stuff is going to be vendorable if you're sitting on a bunch of stuff you don't want. So I guess that could be good. But it sounds really versatile and flexible. It almost reminds me of you remember at the tail end of Mists of Pandaria when we had like the initial implementation of the Valor system, and you could earn item upgrades like 4 stages of Valor upgrades on most gear that you could equip, and you could get the Valor from a wide variety of sources from doing stuff in the game. It kind of reminds me of that, but just expanded to a way broader degree and coming in at a much earlier point in the expansion where it could be relevant and feel better for longer. And if it works out, maybe this is just sort of a whole new dimension to World of Warcraft and to gearing.
Yeah, I feel like it's very much a system that's coming in that is going to essentially guinea pig the PvE content for players. And if it goes well and they really like it, they'll probably implement something similar for PvP and elsewhere, where if you're doing open world, war mode on content, you can earn the LFR and normal versions of the PvP upgrades. And if you're doing, arenas and whatnot at a certain level, then you earn the, heroic ones or mythic ones based off of the difficulty you're doing as far as the rating that you're at. I can see that being rolled out at some point. Sort of to encourage players to essentially be able to basically earn conquest by just going out into the world and doing war mode stuff, and just you're basically earning that currency as much as you want and upgrading all the pieces as much as you want just by doing open world stuff. I think is a neat concept they could move towards. So this very much feels like hey, you know what, we're going to try this out for a season, see how it works. No one would be surprised if in season 3, provided this went well in season 2, we saw it broaden as to all of the events that it's taking place and being used on. I'm kind of iffy about it being 2 currencies. One being, hey, you need to have the proper crest to be able to upgrade something to that tier, and then you have to have the right amount of flight stones to be able to empower that crest to be able to upgrade that piece of gear. I kind of wish it was just like a one-off thing, but I understand that by doing this, you're essentially encouraging people to participate in specific types of content to earn their crests. But you can earn flight stones whenever you want, right? Flight stones come from everywhere.
Right.
So that's your you got tons of that currency that you're going to be able to earn up, and people have tons and tons of their flight stones, and I'm sure there'll be, as you've made lots of Flintstones jokes about having how many vitamins do you have. But when it comes to the crests, them being the key piece to actually determine which bump you're wanting to make on your gear, whether it's normal to heroic, LFR to normal, or heroic to mythic. So yeah, I think it's a neat system that I'll be curious to see how well it plays out this season.
I think the big thing about the crests is that they preserve your investment in a specific type of content, right? Like they allow you to sort of distinguish yourself. Like I did this from a high level keystone, or I did this from a mythic raid boss, and I think there is value in that. Like you should be able to get your gear up to like the top end of the threshold for the difficulty range that you're doing, but not into the next difficulty range. Like I think that's fine, at least for something this big coming in. And like they said in the post, this doesn't replace anything. This isn't just how gear works now. Like this is a layer on top of what you're already doing. I think that's probably good, especially at the outset. The problem is it gets convoluted, because we're replacing Valor. Right, we're replacing that currency. We're bringing in 2 different currencies, but we're also like getting rid of the primal infusions. There's so many moving pieces here, but I think this is a worthy experiment, and I feel like this could have legs. But I definitely think you want to. I see the wisdom in narrowing it down at the start to okay, you need these crests to get more item level, and your crest is going to be limited to the activities you're actually doing. Like I think that's okay. And because it would also, it would feel, I think, bad for players who are doing higher level stuff if this was just straight grindable and nothing had any caps and ceilings, and which there are, depending on where your stuff comes from, it's going to cap out at a certain item level threshold. So all this stuff is kind of tiered to get you like maxed out in the power range that you're playing in, which should give you an advantage to step into maybe like a higher range. Or also a way to, maybe move some gear around. So that I think that all makes sense, and it preserves, it preserves the investment and the effort of the people playing at the higher levels, because people are not going to catch up to them just by grinding world quests. So, obviously, probably stuff that's laid out here will change over the course of PTR and before implementation, and it will definitely change once it's on live, and it will change in the future. But the other problem is you have items called crests, and anybody who played Diablo Immortal starts twitching probably when you
I didn't even think of that.
you use that word. But that is what it is. But I mean the basic idea here is, think of crests as sort of like the infusions that we have now if you've done any crafting, and then think of flight stones as what if you could get Valor from doing basically anything in the game? And it's not like 1-to-1, but that's pretty close if you're trying to wrap your head around this.
Yeah, and we'll dive into this more once things become a little bit more solid than they are currently. One of the things that can get kind of convoluted is the piece of gear that drops for you that you start upgrading has its own classification to it. So you might have an Explorer type of gear, which can then only be pushed to a certain point before you have to get a new piece of gear that's then a Adventurer piece of gear. And when you can only push that to a certain point, you then can get a Veteran piece of gear, and that then goes to a Champion piece of gear, and then a Hero one, and then suddenly you're at Mythic Eye level sort of stuff that you can't push beyond. So it's kind of weird to sort of see like the comparables of, okay, well, you get an Explorer piece, and by the time you push that Explorer piece to its 5th out of 8 ranks, it's now on par item level wise with an Adventurer piece at its 1st rank, which you then can then push up, and that kind of, they put a whole spreadsheet up, which can take you a moment of staring at to sort of be like, what even am I really looking at here? But yeah, what it essentially means is if you ran a LFR dungeon and got a piece of gear, you can essentially push that up to being 398 item level. Like that's where it can get up to, which is kind of neat, just from that one piece of gear. Your normal piece of gear, you could then push all the way up to 411, which is kind of crazy. And then your Veteran stuff can go all the way up to 424. And then your Hero stuff actually goes right up until 441. So at that point, 444, 447, 450, they remain mythic pieces of gear that only people who are doing Mythic Raid can get. But getting 3 item levels below that is kind of crazy to be able to do that. So
yeah, that's not bad.
It's a very neat scaling system where even on the low end, you're gaining, what is that? That is 12 item levels on your gear just through using the system, and that's a passive system, right? So it's kind of a nice tool for players to feel like, hey, I want to keep playing the game and feel like I'm getting rewarded for playing the game on a daily basis. This gives people a reason to log in and play the game on a daily basis while they're trying to get these pieces upgraded. So I think that's an attractive thing about the season for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the upgrade range pretty much encompasses that entire 13 item level gap between difficulties, right? Or between, in this case, like the crest ranks essentially. So yeah, that's really nice. One thing I want to point out that they talked about was the redundancy discount, which means that if you have an item in a slot at an item level, you can upgrade another item to that same item level without spending a crest. So you can just grind out your flight stones, and if you have like shoulders, let's say, but they don't have the stats that you want, but they're high item level. So you wear them because they're overall an upgrade, but you get like more optimized shoulders, but they're at a lower item level within that range, that upgrade range. Then you don't need to spend a crest to bump them up. You just need flight stones, which you can grind essentially infinitely. So that's really awesome. But the thing that's even better about that is that it's account wide. So once you get a main decked out, you can get another character leveled up just with flight stones. That sounds pretty awesome. And that's a huge departure, I feel like, from other similar systems we've seen in the past. That's a huge benefit for players that want to play more than one character, because you have the flexibility to kind of do whatever you want with that other character. I assume flight stones are going to be character bound, but right now, if you want to power up a character, you basically what you're doing is grinding 16s, and you need 10 16s to get one piece of gear up to 418 range, and that's a lot of dungeons for one piece of gear. You got 15 pieces of gear, give or take. That's not great. This is so much more flexible than that, and having the account bound unlocks per slot for item level is a really cool addition.
Yeah.
I will say, if you look at this table and the way it's all broken down from Explorer gear on up, it will make your head spin.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to absorb all of this. But I think in practice, it's really not going to matter as much, because what you're going to see on the item tooltip is the upgradable range on it, right?
Yeah.
You will see if it's 1 of 8 or 2 of 8 or whatever for the range that it's in, and you can go from there.
Yeah.
you're not going to be thinking about it as you collect stuff necessarily. You don't need to have this table memorized, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no,
the game will lead you through it as you go.
Yeah, no. The table, what you have to focus on if you actually want to understand the table at all, is that it's entirely sorted by item level. So when you're looking at the table, you're like, oh, okay, I now understand that they're saying an adventure piece of gear that's 1 of 8 is equivalent to, item level wise, a 5 of 8 explorer piece. That's what they're really trying to tell you in this table, which fixes your brain when you stare at it the first time you look at it. So just keeping that in mind.
I don't think it's something you're going to need to have handy at all times to refer to, because you're just going to see the tooltips on the items you have, and then you'll make the decision about what you want to upgrade. And
you want to make them all 8 of 8. I mean, that's what it comes down to, is what you're going to be doing. As long as you don't have a better piece of gear, you're going to be pushing to 8 of 8,
Right, yeah. So I think it's very bold. This is a huge philosophy shift from kind of what we've seen before, but I think it's really exciting. I talked recently about how much I've enjoyed the crafting system, because I've been able to make these really powerful pieces of gear in this expansion and kind of grow alongside them. Like, okay, this gets me into the range where I can start doing 16s, and now I'm doing 16s, and now I can max this out and really power up, and then I can do it with the next piece and so on. And I love the concept of items that grow alongside you as you kind of power up and do content. I mean, the artifact weapon is a perfect example.
Yeah.
This doesn't really turn every single item into an artifact weapon, but having these robust progression paths on all manner of gear and being able to obtain the items to upgrade them from most sources of gameplay, I think is a huge boon to players. And it's a lot on its surface. I think it's a lot better than what we've had. And I like what we've had the last 2 years or so, but I think this seems like a much better model overall, especially in light of the fact that all this really does is augment stuff that you're already getting from doing the stuff you already like to do in the game.
Yeah, I mean,
this is not a thing to go out and go do. It's not a thing that you do. This is a thing that enhances stuff you already did.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely that, and the biggest thing to me is it gives people a reason to log in if they're trying to actually gain character power. One of the biggest issues I had, and obviously this isn't speaking to the Mythic players out there. The people who are running Mythic content are just going to have item level gear that's higher than this, and this system is something they can basically just ignore unless they're gearing up their alts in that situation. But when it comes down to it, this is a system that is going to encourage your average player who logs in every day to be like, hey, you know what? Maybe I will run that extra Mythic Plus dungeon or 2. Maybe I will do that extra couple of bits of content, or maybe I will do LFR this week, or whatever it is, because they gain character power from doing those activities. Even if it's something where, hey, you know what? I already have my, best in slot boots, right? I'm not going to be going out and trying to get a different set of boots. Maybe those best in slot boots are, essentially 1 of 8. And so now you're like, oh, actually, I will do this content over and over and do this other stuff in the game over and over because I want to boost that up to 8 of 8. And now suddenly you have heroic item level boots as opposed to having normal ones. Like, that to me is what the motivation I see behind this content. And I think it's a great system if that's how it's going to end up working. So yeah, we'll chat more about it when we actually get closer and closer to this release and see what the different versions look like. Okay.
Yeah, I think it fills a gap that we have, right? Because I mean, I've talked a lot about not having motivation to play the game because I've kind of reached the end of the road with 10.0, and it's like, in a world where this exists, maybe it's like, I should do the dungeon quest for the week, even though it's not a keystone, because maybe the quest is beneficial to me. I want to just go over a couple. There's an FAQ at the bottom, and I think there's a couple things worth pointing out before we put a lid on this for now. This is something we're going to be talking about a lot.
That's why I'm kind of like, we can save some of this.
Yeah, but just a couple things to point out. Like, you have to have stuff soulbound that your character can use in order to unlock that upgrade. So you don't give the example they give is like, there's no benefit to giving a priest a warglaive to unlock a item level on a slot. Mythic Plus score is going to remain as we know it, except it no longer has bearing on item level upgrades. This is the item level upgrade system. So kind of like we were talking about last week at length about Mythic Plus, like they've just uncoupled this. So you're still going to have your keystone achievements, and they're going to have their own rewards associated with them, but it's not tied to how much you can upgrade your gear, which is, I think that's a huge win. Valor's going away. There is no more Valor as of patch 10.1. So I think that's fine for where we're at now. Now maybe we end up in a spot where we need it back, but it's going. And there was one funny thing about Fury Warriors, because Fury Warriors are obviously in a unique situation. They use two-handers, nobody else does. The question, as stated, is I'm a Fury Warrior, and I was looking at the weapon upgrade section. I can't find the part that makes me sad to wield two-handed weapons. And the answer is because of the way redundancy for two-handed weapons works, Fury Warriors get a unique benefit. Upgrading a single two-handed weapon makes the same upgrade on the other weapon cost half the usual amount of flight stones and no crests. We forgot to add a part that would make you sad. Please forgive us. So this is huge. There's no penalty for Fury Warriors because of their unique loadout. They can, once they have one weapon at item level threshold, they can bring the other one up to that threshold for discount on flight stones. Perfect. And if they seem really open to feedback. Like, this is definitely what they're going to go with for season 2, and maybe it'll go away if it sucks, and maybe it'll stick around if we like it. So, this was the big bombshell in yesterday's news. I mean, it's like, okay, we have a patch. We're going to have a new zone. We're going to have a new raid. We're going to have a season roll. We get it. We're going to have some new stuff to pay attention to, but this is a huge shift in the way that we look at gear in the game. And if it's even remotely successful, I think it's going to pay off for a long time to come. I love the way that it sounds on the surface, just that idea of like, I have this thing and I can make it stronger, and then I can try to get stronger things because I have the stronger thing, or I have this thing and I'm interested in it, but it's not strong enough for me to use yet. I wish I could make it stronger. Like, those are problems we frequently run into. So it's cool to have a system that maybe supports that a bit more.
Yeah. All right. With that, we want to give a shout out and thank you to our patrons. Our patrons do a lot for our show, and the amount that they contribute is amazing to help us improve the content that we create. And today I'm giving a special shout out to Arajian, Celian, Kapawi, Max, Mibble the Mighty, Nick Shorel, Viper14, and Zalius. Thank you so much. We appreciate all of our patrons give to the show. And this has been a busy year so far. No new patrons this current week. However, stay tuned for next week when we check in with our patrons, see what's going on. And Jason and I will have our little chat here in the next couple of weeks where we'll firm up some sort of plan for this first quarter that we're in here for 2023, and decide what it is we're doing, whether it's like a Jackbox game or a Q&A or something fun. We'll figure it out. We'll figure that out.
Yep. Thank you, patrons, for the support. Thank you for your patience as we have not put anything in place for the replacement for the Q&A episode so far, but we've had some really good suggestions, and we'll continue to have the discussion. We'll get something going sooner than later at this point. So we do appreciate your patience, and thank you so much for the support. I mean, we couldn't do the show. We couldn't do it at the level that we do it, and as consistently as we do without you.
Yeah.
I know the schedule's been all over the place this year, and that will likely continue for a while, but we will always get shows out to you and communicate to you about what to expect as best we can, as far as what we know ourselves. So sometimes we don't even really know, but we want to keep the show on a weekly schedule as much as we possibly can, even if it floats around within the week.
Yeah. And again, this week it kind of worked out for us because a whole bunch of stuff was announced yesterday, and now we got to talk about it on the show. So you get all of our opinions as opposed to having to wait a week for that to kick off, and us having kind of a more lackluster, less newsy show yesterday. So that worked out. If you have enjoyed this episode of The Starting Zone, consider heading over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. They really help out our show, and we love hearing from our listeners. This one comes in from Chaso1884, entitled, "Great show, very informative." Says, "I work weird hours and don't have time to keep up with all the changes in World of Warcraft. These guys do a great job of letting me know what it all is coming up with gameplay changes and events. I also like that they share news on what's going on with Blizzard itself, even if that news is sometimes depressing. Keep up the great work. I look forward to listening each week." Yeah, it's been important to Jason and I to make sure we stay on top of the ABK news for people so that they can know a little bit more about what's going on at the company itself and what the people who make the great games that we love are sort of going through at the moment. So I'm glad you enjoy that, even if sometimes it's not the most uplifting thing to start the show off with. But when it comes down to it, thank you so much for listening to the show. We really appreciate that you take the time to leave us a review. It means a lot to us, helps more people find the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for writing in. And yeah, it is depressing sometimes, and I wish we didn't have to do it, but I couldn't in good conscience do the show without mentioning it, because we don't have a game without these people, and we want them to be happy and productive. And but I'm glad that you enjoy the show, and yeah, that that's what we love to hear is that it's hard to keep up with everything that's going on, and that's that the show condenses it in a way that I can digest. That's what we like, and that's what we try to do here. So
yeah.
It was a bit of a challenge this week because, man, we're all over the place. We got 2 PTRs out at the same time.
Yeah.
What's happening? I don't ever remember the game being like this.
Well, that's going to wrap up episode 568 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter, or you can join our Discord over at thestartingzone.com/Discord. And we also have shirts and mugs and stickers and stuff for sale over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone. And you got sweet designs on, like I said, shirts, mugs, stickers, masks, all sorts of stuff. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me, as always, over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. And sometimes the API works and I can post links to things, so you never know. You can also find me streaming WoW, usually on twitch.tv/Shieldwald, when my upstream works well enough for me to stream for more than an hour at a time. So check that out. YouTube.com/Shieldwald as well, although with the weird net issues I've been having at prime time, it's I can't even get out to one outlet, let alone two. But those are the video channels. Check them out. Still streaming Vault of the Incarnate stuff and Keystone, so come say hi.
I hope your net stuff gets solved up soon, because it's such a pain to deal with. Man, if you're
I think it's ISP stuff, which is like totally out of my hands. It's super fun. It's not my equipment. I just even got a new modem, but it seems to be mostly like Tuesday nights I get plagued with it.
Yeah, we had a lot of issues with ISPs overselling the node that feeds our neighborhood when we first moved in. So hopefully they resolve stuff for you at some point soon. If you're trying to find me online, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, or over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD, or on YouTube at youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.